The late afternoon sun was spilling through the curtains of my quiet living room when I found myself doing something I hadn't done in years, playing with my old childhood toy. It was an action figure I had held onto for decades, a little worn around the edges, but still holding the same charm it did when I was 7 years old. Its paint had faded, one arm was a little loose, but every time I looked at it, I felt the same warmth I did as a boy sitting on the floor of my parents' living room, creating entire worlds from my imagination. I didn't plan to bring the toy out that day. Honestly, it had been sitting in a cardboard box in the attic, tucked away with old photo albums, yearbooks, and forgotten keepsakes. But I had been cleaning and organizing when I came across it. The moment I held it in my hands, I couldn't resist. I brushed the dust off and sat down on the floor, almost instinctively moving it around like I used to, making little battle sounds under my breath. I was so caught up in my nostalgia that I didn't hear the front door open. My nephew, Ethan, who is 10 years old, had been dropped off by my sister, Rachel. She often left him with me in the afternoons when she had errands to run or late work meetings. Usually, Ethan would call out to announce his arrival, but this time he came in quietly, probably because he thought I was napping like I often did around that time. Instead, he walked into the living room and froze. "Uncle James?" His voice cracked with both confusion and amusement. I nearly dropped the toy out of embarrassment. Here I was, a grown man in my late 30s, caught red-handed playing with an old action figure like a kid. My face heated up instantly. I expected Ethan to burst into laughter, maybe even tease me about it for weeks. But instead, he tilted his head, his curious brown eyes lighting up. "Wait, is that a Ranger Man figure?" he asked, stepping closer. I blinked in surprise. "You know Ranger Man?" "Of course." Ethan grinned, plopping down on the floor beside me without hesitation. "They brought out a new version last year, but it doesn't look as cool as this one. Where did you get it?" I chuckled softly, relieved that his reaction wasn't mockery, but genuine excitement. "Well, I got it when I was about your age. This little guy has been with me through a lot. I used to build forts and battlefields all over the living room for him." Ethan's face lit up even brighter. "Can I see?" I handed the toy over gently, and he studied it as though it were some kind of treasure. His fingers traced the scratches and dents, but instead of seeing them as flaws, he seemed to see them as proof of its history. "This is so cool, Uncle James. It feels, I don't know, real. Like it's been through adventures." For the first time in a long while, I felt that childlike wonder return, not because I was playing alone, but because I was sharing it with someone else. "Do you want to play?" I asked hesitantly, half expecting him to shrug it off in favor of video games or his phone. But Ethan's eyes widened as though I had just offered him front row seats to his favorite movie. "Yes, let's." And so, just like that, the two of us were on the carpet, surrounded by a few random objects I grabbed to serve as buildings and obstacles. We used books as mountains, cereal boxes as towers, and a rolled-up blanket as a riverbank. Ethan brought out some of his own small figures from his backpack, and before long, our battlefield was alive with action. Hours slipped by without us realizing. The living room echoed with our laughter, sound effects, and wild storylines. I found myself getting lost in it all, just as I had when I was a boy. Ethan's imagination meshed with mine so seamlessly, it was like passing down an unspoken tradition. At one point, Rachel came back to pick him up. She stopped in the doorway, her mouth curving into a smile as she watched the two of us huddled on the floor, mid-battle. "Well, I see you two have been busy." Ethan looked up, grinning ear to ear. "Mom, Uncle James has the original Ranger Man, and he let me play with it. We made this whole story about how he's trying to save the city from evil robots." Rachel laughed softly, shaking her head. "I don't think I've ever seen you this excited outside of Christmas morning." I shrugged sheepishly, holding up the figure. "Guess some things never lose their magic." Rachel's expression softened, and she glanced between us. "You know, Dad would have loved to see this. He used to talk about how you'd spend hours with that toy." Her words tugged at something deep inside me. Our father had passed away years ago, and it had been one of those quiet pains that lingered in the family. She was right, though. Dad had been the one to buy me the toy in the first place. He had told me stories about heroes, courage, and kindness, all through the lens of this little action figure. After Rachel and Ethan left that evening, I sat with the toy in my hands, memories flooding back. It struck me how something so small could carry generations of meaning. My father gave it to me. I played with it endlessly. And now, decades later, I was passing on that same spark of imagination to Ethan. The next weekend, Ethan came over again, but this time he brought along some of his own toys to add to our growing universe. We made rules, drew maps on paper, and even gave each character a backstory. What began as a random, nostalgic moment turned into a ritual between us. Every time he visited, we built upon our storyline, making it bigger and more elaborate. Rachel noticed the change in him. "He talks about you all the time," she told me one day. "You've become his favorite person to hang out with." Her words warmed my heart in ways I can't fully explain. In a world where kids often get lost in screens and distractions, Ethan and I had carved out this little space for pure imagination and connection. One rainy afternoon, when the sky was gray and thunder rolled in the distance, Ethan said something that stayed with me forever. As we arranged our figures for yet another adventure, he paused and looked at me. "Uncle James," he said seriously, "when I grow up, I want to keep playing like this. Even when I'm old." I smiled and patted his shoulder. "Then you'll never really grow old." It wasn't just about toys. It was about family, memories, and the invisible threads that connect one generation to the next. Ethan gave me back a piece of my childhood I thought was lost, and in return, I was giving him something he could carry into his future, the understanding that imagination and joy have no age limit. The story of a nephew walking in on his uncle playing with a childhood toy might sound simple, even silly to some. But to us, it became something much more. It became a bond, a bridge between past and present, and a reminder that sometimes the smallest, most unexpected moments can turn into the most heartwarming family stories of all.